So the first thing I'm going to talk about is acceleration and specifically drive index. We're looking at the ability to project the body forward in the first couple of steps. So the first thing we'll look at is hip projection distance. So this is one of our athletes, Keelan Doss, with the Raiders. And one thing that we can see early on is that his hip is traveling forward on initial push. So a lot of times guys try to get their foot down early. But what he's doing here is he's allowing himself to use the ground to push away horizontally to create extension. So he's not thinking about triple extension. He's not thinking about anything like that. He's literally thinking about his hip traveling forward while his torso stays in the same position. Okay. From here, we're looking at, so that's hip projection distance. It's how far this hip can travel forward on the first step. The next part we look at is retraction. So his hip travels forward. He's in this great position here. Now, a lot of times when athletes do this wrong is they open up that front leg in front and it becomes a break. So the first thing he's thinking about when he gets to this point is traveling that foot backwards into the ground. So if it travels backwards into the ground, by the time the foot lands, it's under his hip and he can continue to project his body forward into the next step. And you see each step that he's taking is the same idea, right? Traveling backwards on contact. Okay, you see when he's decelling, it's the exact opposite. So in his accel and his drive index, each contact is getting faster and the air times are getting higher. So he's getting more distance from air time and the ground time is becoming shorter. All right, the second thing that we'll look at is what this equals is touchdown distance. So he's got a good touchdown distance, meaning his foot is landing under his hip or behind his hip on the first step, under or behind on the second step, under or behind on the third step, because he's able to get projection of his hip and get that leg retracted back into the ground. So that creates touchdown distance. Here's another example. We're adding two pieces to this. So we're adding the torso projection and we're adding shin angle rise. So there's two pieces that kinematically or technically that we're looking at that will add to this. So let's look at the video below. You can see his torso begin to project forward. And every step he's taking, it's rising slightly, rising slightly, rising slightly. Hold on, there's somebody walking, so I'm gonna wait. The other thing that we'll see here is that his shin angles are going to rise every step. So initially it's a very acute angle and back. The next angle is going to be less acute and less acute, less acute until the point that it's vertical. So typically athletes will accelerate about 7 steps before that shin becomes completely vertical and their torso is still driving forward. So we see these large changes in angles. Okay, do you see all the little graphics that I made?
They're fire.
Yeah. So here's an athlete, Elijah Molden, that got 15 miles per hour in 4 steps, which is typically our standard, 14.5 to 15 miles per hour in 4 steps. So you can see here from the initial push, he's using both feet to drive himself forward and get as horizontal as possible before retracting that leg back into the ground. So he's retracting that leg back into the ground on each step and is projecting him further. So each step, the contact times are getting shorter, the air times are getting higher, the torso angle is rising and the shin angle is rising. Okay, so we're looking at 99 here, Aaron Donald. So this is last week's game. And what we're looking at is his 2-foot push. We're looking at his hip projection distance. And we're looking at the retraction that gives him a good touchdown distance. So you see you see this great projection of his hip here. So his hip is projected forward all the way to here before it retracts back and gets good touchdown distance. So within 1 step, he's gained so much velocity that he's able to manipulate what his opponent is doing because of how much power is created in this first step.